In the early days of civilization lived a king more myth than man. The gods forged him, 2/3 divine, 1/3 human. His name was Gilgamesh, his city, Uruk, a monument to his ego. He had everything, yet he was empty. A tyrant, his people suffered, crying out to the gods. The gods answered. They sculpted a rival from clay, the wild man Enkidu. Covered in hair, living with animals, he was his mirror opposite. Their fight was legendary. Gilgamesh won, but in the dust, they found an unbreakable friendship. The lonely king had a brother. But peace wasn't meant to last. In the heart of a king terrified of mortality, ambition was growing. Gilgamesh, the king who was practically a god, feared one thing: being forgotten. To carve his name into history, he would challenge a sacred guardian, the demon Humbaba. But in this quest, Gilgamesh would learn the line between hero and monster is written not in victory, but in blood. Having a friend changed Gilgamesh. The tyrant's rage cooled, but a new fear crept in, the terror of death and being forgotten. He looked at Uruk's massive walls, knowing one day they would be dust. His magnificent life was a fleeting moment. He confessed this fear to Enkidu. "I have not made a name for myself." He needed one immortalizing act. The idea took hold. He would conquer a legend. He would travel to the forbidden Cedar Forest, a sacred realm, and kill its guardian. "I will cut down the cedars," he declared, "and I will make an everlasting name for myself." The target was Humbaba, a demigod appointed by the great god Enlil to protect the forest. His roar was a flood, his mouth fire, his breath death. Enkidu, who knew the wild, was terrified. This was suicide. He tried to talk Gilgamesh out of it, explaining Humbaba wasn't evil, but a divine warden doing his sacred duty. To kill him would be to insult Enlil. The elders of Uruk agreed, begging their king to reconsider. But Gilgamesh just laughed. His fear of a meaningless death was greater than his fear of any demon. This was the only way to a legacy that would never die. His mind was made up. He ordered the strongest axes forged. Enkidu, torn between terror and loyalty, finally gave in. His love for Gilgamesh was stronger than his wisdom. If his brother was going to walk into the jaws of death, he would walk with him. Their departure was grim. The elders gave reluctant blessings. Gilgamesh's mother, the goddess Ninsun, prayed to the sun god Shamash to protect her son. Shamash, an enemy of Humbaba, offered his help, and the two set out. Their journey was an ordeal. For 6 days they traveled, crossing 7 mountains, the world growing wilder. Atop each mountain, Gilgamesh would pray for a dream. The dreams came, each more terrifying than the last. In one, a huge mountain collapsed on top of them. Gilgamesh woke in a cold sweat, but Enkidu insisted it was a good sign. "The mountain is Humbaba," he declared. "We will make him fall." Another night, Gilgamesh dreamed a ferocious bull pinned him, just as a mysterious figure gave him water. Again, Enkidu spun it as a victory. A third dream brought total chaos. The sky exploded and death rained down. Even as Enkidu insisted this also was a good sign, Gilgamesh's courage was failing. He cried out to Shamash, whose voice answered from the sky. The terror they felt was Humbaba's aura. The guardian wore 7 layers of mystical splendor. If he put on all 7, they would be powerless. They were running out of time. They stood at the entrance to the Cedar Forest, a place of intimidating beauty. The trees were so tall they touched the sky, a living temple. And here, at the border between mortal and divine, Enkidu's nerve finally broke. The raw power was too much. He wanted to go back. A fierce argument broke out. Gilgamesh, having mastered his own fear, now had to convince his friend. He goaded him, challenged his courage. Their shouting echoed through the sacred quiet. Deep in the forest, the guardian heard them. Humbaba was coming. Humbaba emerged, a giant ogre of raw, primal power. His voice boomed, accusing Enkidu of betrayal. He swore he would rip Gilgamesh apart. Faced with the real thing, Gilgamesh's courage vanished. He froze, paralyzed by fear. It was Enkidu, the one so afraid, who now found his strength. He yelled at Gilgamesh, shaming him, reminding him of his quest. With a roar, Gilgamesh charged, and the battle began. The ground shook. They swung their axes, but Humbaba was a whirlwind, dodging every blow. They were losing. In desperation, Gilgamesh screamed one last prayer to Shamash, and Shamash answered. He unleashed 13 great winds, a divine tornado that slammed into Humbaba. The guardian, trapped, blinded, and immobilized, was thrown off balance. Gilgamesh captured his foe. The great guardian was beaten. Gilgamesh's axe was at his throat. In that moment, everything changed. The monster was gone. In his place was a captive, weeping, begging for his life. "Spare me, Gilgamesh," he pleaded. "Let me live, and I will be your servant. This forest will all be yours." The line between hero and monster blurred. Gilgamesh hesitated, his hand trembling. He was moved. This wasn't an evil beast, it was a defeated soldier. Mercy felt right. But Enkidu saw it differently. "Don't listen to him," he urged. "If he lives, he'll be our enemy forever. Your fame can only be secured with his death. Kill him, Gilgamesh. Kill him now." Humbaba gave one final chilling warning. He was the servant of Enlil. To kill him was to defy a powerful god. It would bring a terrible curse down on them both. The choice hung in the air, mercy or glory. Gilgamesh looked from the pleading guardian to his determined friend. The quest was for fame. Mercy might be seen as weakness. With a heavy heart, Gilgamesh lifted his axe. He swung. The sound of the blade echoed as the head of the guardian rolled onto the ground. There was no cheer of victory, only the deafening silence of a desecrated forest. The two friends stood over the body, the air thick with blood. With the guardian gone, they started chopping down the magnificent trees, taking the tallest, most sacred cedar. Enkidu planned to use its wood to build a massive door for the temple of Enlil, a deeply ironic gift to the very god they had just defied. They built a raft, loaded it with the timber and Humbaba's head as a gruesome trophy, and floated back down the Euphrates. They would return to Uruk as conquerors. But the gods had been watching. Enlil, who had appointed Humbaba, was furious. Mortals had trespassed on sacred land, destroyed his forest, and murdered his faithful servant. This wasn't heroic, it was a crime against the divine order. In the council of the gods, a price had to be paid. The gods declared that one of the two friends had to die. Enlil's rage was absolute. The decision was made. The price for Gilgamesh's fame would not be paid by the king. It would be paid by his friend. Enkidu was marked for death. In the end, the victory over Humbaba was completely hollow. Gilgamesh got the fame he craved, but the cost was catastrophic. The line between hero and monster had been crossed. This was never a story of good versus evil. It was a tragedy of clashing duties. Humbaba wasn't a demon, he was a loyal guardian doing his job. Gilgamesh's moment of compassion was overruled by his friend's brutal logic and his own fear of being forgotten. The consequences were swift. Enkidu's death sent Gilgamesh spiraling into a despair far deeper than his fear of oblivion. It launched him on a second, desperate quest, not for fame this time, but for eternal life. He had tried to conquer death in legend, and in doing so, brought death right into the heart of his own life. He had carved his name into eternity, but he had stained it forever. This story, one of the oldest ever written, asks questions we still struggle with. What's the real cost of ambition? When does a hero's quest for glory turn them into the monster they set out to destroy? If you find these tales fascinating, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next dive into the myths that shaped our world.